Welcome to Grew with Portia, the podcast that uncovers the hidden treasures within grief. I'm your host, Portia the producer, and I'm inviting you to join me on a transformative journey where we will exchange laughter, of course, the best medicine of them all. Reflect on cherished memories. Remember that time that the little boy grabbed my hand instead of his mother's at the amusement park? Yikes. And of course, discover gratitude while navigating one of life's hardest challenges, loss. So get ready to grow with me, Portia the producer. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Grow with Portia. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep it with all things Grow with Portia. You guys, I'm very excited about this conversation that we're going to have today with Dr. Mar. But before I introduce her and bring her on stage, I want to talk about something really quick. How many of us can identify as being high achievers? Anybody else out there? One thing that I recognize with those of us who are high achievers, go-getters, there tends to be this notion that we have to wear the superwoman cape 24/7, 365. I remember several years ago, I had a conversation with someone about wearing the strong woman cape, how so many of us, especially women of color, tend to take on that role of being the mother for everyone, right? When the matriarch tends to transition, then we step into that role. But how many of us have reached that breaking point as a result of that? Let that sink in. So today I have the honor of being joined by Dr. Mar, who will speak to us about her story and how she's able to continue life despite some of the different grief and losses she's had in her life. So welcome to Grow with Portia. Dr. Mar, how are you today?
I am great. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Same, Dr. Mar, because I know there's so many people right now, realistically, who are serial entrepreneurs that have it all, that are balancing so many different losses. On the outside, they look polished, they look fine, but we don't know how many hospital stays they've had, how many near-death moments, how many collapses. So for our audience, Dr. Mar, I'm going to just dive right in. As I brought up in the beginning, you're a very high achieving woman while privately navigating infertility. And I'm curious for our audience, what did people see on the outside that didn't reflect what you were experiencing behind closed doors?
That is a great question to get things started. And what people saw on the outside was what they deemed to be typical Marlene. Always had it together, always dressed up, always smiling. I love to smile. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
On cue. Like I love to smile and giggle, and I love to just basically have my checklist, whether it's via a calendar or an actual notebook or something. People know I have my checklist. Things are getting done, right? So if you task me with something, or I know I'm tasked with something as a leader, it's getting done. So that's always what everyone saw on the outside.
We're very similar, Dr. Mar. I'm somebody who also keeps a list of things. I mean, whether I go to the grocery store, I'm still that person that writes down everything from the butter to even the smallest things of grabbing gloves, because I don't like touching meat with my bare hands. I'm weird about that. But it's funny how the veil of illusion continues to funnel in our society, considering that there's this new movement of being authentic, right? Especially on social media, especially in the world that we live in today. And I'm curious, Dr. Mar, was there a period of time during that moment and period where you felt that wearing this mask was both hindering you and saving you simultaneously?
Let me tell you, you hit the nail on the head with exactly what the mask accomplished. As a, scholarly researcher, I conducted my dissertation research on the lived infertility experience of women in leadership roles. Okay, so of course, leadership continues to be studied as it should, because it's always evolving. Fertility in itself is studied, because especially from a clinical aspect, things of that nature. However, never were the two connected before. And my research is the first. And I say that to say, Portia, that in my research, one of the things that I had to do, of course, is interview actual high achieving women. My participants were women leaders, women in leadership roles, and that's exactly what many of the conversations that we had touched on. This mask that they had to put on, and for some, almost all of us, thank goodness we had the mask because it allowed us, in a way, not only gave us the possibility and ability to get through what we're going through for the sake of what's being, spelled out or required in front of us. It also allowed us to keep going. And it also allowed us, in a way, to hide, because on a personal standpoint, when you're dealing at least with infertility, along with many other things, it's surrounded by shame. It's surrounded. And even though what you're going through and what we've experienced was real, even though it was okay to be sad, it was okay to be confused, it was okay to actually live that experience, there was a shame part of it where, thank goodness we had the mask, because at that point when the mask is on, okay, all right, I don't have to be ashamed. I don't have to deal with it. Like everybody thinks everyone is okay. So from that perspective, having the mask on, and it was the similar experience for many of the women participants that I interviewed, having that mask on, it kind of saved us because from a personal standpoint, we're now able to do everything else and fit in and get everything else done in life. But on the other side of that, it really hurt too, because why couldn't we let other people in? Why couldn't we allow folks to know, you know what, I'm here, but I'm dealing with some stuff. So give me a little grace, or I may be a little slower, or maybe I need help, right, in getting this done. And because you have that mask on, you don't even ask for that. So in a way, it was counterintuitive, but it did serve both purposes, allowing you to hide, to deal with it, and in a way, basically hindering your healing and hindering your
Mm.
existence. So,
Dr. Moore, I appreciate you sharing that, because immediately what comes to my mind,
yeah,
as these high achieving women are opening doors of opportunity for other people, you're birthing things. But at the
correct,
same time, it's as though there's a stillbornness in your life. And it's kind of that like duality, right? And I
right,
often say that grief teaches you a lot about duality. You're going to have those days where you can hold the laughter of thinking about your loved one and at the same time cry about missing their physical presence.
correct,
And I'm curious, Dr. Marr, I don't think a lot of people truly understand the grief that comes with infertility, because it'd probably be classified as disenfranchised. Because in probably the societal norm, it's like, oh, the baby hasn't been physically here yet. So how can you create or
right,
envision a pathway, a life, a future of something that's not physically visible? And I'm curious for our audience, Dr. Marr, what else did you find yourself grieving outside of the infertility journey during that season of your life?
You explained it perfectly, because society does look at infertility as something that doesn't necessarily warrant space to grieve, because the actual physical, apparatus or child or being that it is that you're trying to birth isn't here yet. However, dealing with infertility is a true example of grieving the unknown, grieving the possibility, grieving the idea that even though I try hard and I do all the things, I don't know if I'm going to have the end result that I'm looking for. And one of the things that I try to always explain, so it kind of paints a picture that people can visualize, is let's take school, for instance, whether you're in primary, middle school, high school, college, whatever, you know, you start not necessarily knowing what's going to happen, but there's a plan, right? There's a plan
Right.
and a strategy for school. You go from this grade to that grade, you take this subject, build up on it with this subject, gain this expertise. And you know that when you start, it may not always be easy, but when you start, you're going to be done. Like that's the normal outlook when people start a task like being in school. With infertility, it's not like that, because you start, right? First of all, it's something you didn't ask for. So there's no playbook to say, hey, here's your infertility, or here's your grief, or here's your loss. No one
Right.
asks for this stuff. And even though you see it around you, sometimes you don't understand what people are dealing with or how they're dealing with it until and unless you've gone through it. So there's no playbook, there's no roadmap. And you're navigating this journey, Portia, not knowing if you're even going to succeed. So imagine you're on an uncharted territory, you have no roadmap, you are often faced with forks in the road because even though you start and let's say you go to the doctor or you go to a grief therapist or whatever the case may be, there's oh, okay, we're going to go this way, not knowing what's going to happen because there's been no proven track record behind that, right? And then you keep going and going and going, not knowing if you're going to end up with this baby. So you grieve the possibility, you grieve, the potential. And it's really, really hard because in the meantime, life is happening around you and you are indeed birthing other babies, your career, your home, your relationships with your family, and all the things. And the part too that gets a little bit tricky, which is also adding to the grief, is when in nurturing these relationships that are around you, they do involve people maybe spending time with their parents and you just lost yours, or you're at a baby shower and we're celebrating the impending birth of this baby and you're grieving because you don't know if that's going to be your story. And are you happy for this person? You're not unhappy for them, but then you're sad for you. So it's very, very complicated. And the other thing that I would add too is, you mentioned the duality that's involved when high achieving women are juggling all the things. And in doing my research, it's more, to me, I coined it as part of the themes that emerged from my research as a multiplicity of roles, because sometimes we are told to take things one day at a time. And I have to tell you, sometimes you need to put on 3 or 4 different hats during that one day. So you're navigating 3 or 4 roles in the one day. So it's like a multiplicity of roles where you're the impending mother from 7 to 8 because now you're at the clinic trying to get labs drawn. Then when you get to work, you are a leader that everyone's waiting on you. Like, okay, is she 30 minutes late? Is she 9 minutes late? Okay, great, she's here. Okay, what do we do? So people are waiting you on that. So you have that hat on. And then after you've, debriefed with your team or whatever, now you have a different hat on because you're also an employee. So you have your own tasks and then your own things that you need to do. And then maybe midday rolls around and your parents need something because you're also a caretaker. So now that hat goes, so there's a multiplicity of roles going on within the day for high achieving women, and dealing with grief and that impending possibility and not knowing if it's going to come to fruition is something that is really, 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 significant in the lives of many women.
And Dr. Mar, immediately I think of kind of the pinball machine, right? Yeah. When you're sitting there playing pinball, the ball is going to go up. And obviously you have to hit it once it comes back down, but you don't know when you're going to miss the mark.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I love how you brought up the multifacetedness of so many people, especially high achieving women. Right. We're wearing the role sometimes of being a caregiver to elderly parents. If you have kids, you're, raising your kids. If you have a spouse, and then of course you want to make time for your own friends.
Correct.
And if you want to have hobbies, so you're juggling so many things, birthing so many things. But then there's that plateau of there's a stillbornness here.
Yes.
Simultaneously. Yes. And Dr. Mar, before we continue the conversation, if our audience wants to connect with you, want to learn more about your work, obviously get a copy of your book as well, how can our audience connect with you today, Dr. Mar?
Yes, everyone can reach me on my website, www.mcdbe.com. Again, it's www.mcdbe.com, and everything is there. Following me on social, the book, what I do, my events that are coming up, everything is on there on the website.
Excellent. So any of our audience, also you can do a Google search or use AI. AI has become the know-it-all of all of us. I mean, just type in your name and I'm sure to even come up with things that you may not even know, Dr. Mar, about you. Maybe you even forgot. Sometimes I Google myself from time to time just to see what Google populates. And sometimes I laugh because my recent search literally classifies me as an end of life expert. And I said,
Oh,
but that's not really what I do. So it's kind of funny that I'm
yeah.
categorized in the bereavement space, but I don't
Right.
advertise as that. So it's kind of
Right.
funny the things that
Yeah.
happen.
Exactly. Exactly.
Dr. Mar, another thing that I know about you, outside of your
Yes.
infertility journey, I also know that you had the experience of the loss of Angel.
Yes.
Can you share with our audience who Angel was and what you want people to remember about Angel?
Oh, yes. So after 10 years of trying, my husband and I, trying to, further our family because my husband came along with my wonderful young man. I call him my son who didn't give me any labor pains. His name is Rich. So in an effort for us to expand the family, my husband and I had tried for 10 years, and those 10 years included, surgeries, diagnostic testing, procedures, fertility treatments, all of the above. So after 10 years, our doctors decided, okay, it's time to move on to IVF. And as luck would have it, we were one of the lucky ones that were able to find success after our first round of IVF. And I was just elated. I was over the moon. It was the first time I was ever pregnant. Everything was great. And unfortunately, at 22 weeks and 1 day, I had to give birth to Angel, the full shebang in the hospital, labor, contractions, all the things. And it was devastating. I don't even know how else to explain it. It was just a devastating experience, and again, one that you don't plan for. Remember that uncharted, road of infertility, and finally, after all that time, we find success, and it wasn't long lived. So that was definitely something that you just don't plan for. And I have to tell you, Portia, I didn't know if I was coming, if I was going. I felt like I was going crazy. I'm like, why did this happen? How did this happen? And in my case, I ended up with something that they coin now as cervical insufficiency, but back then
Mm.
it was called incompetent cervix. So after the loss of Angel, it's also really important to me to educate awareness, especially when I hear younger folks or whoever that are pregnant. I'm like, okay, have the doctors check your cervix because it's a silent condition that until, you're just walking around and the baby comes out, like you don't know you have it because oftentimes it's very painless. So that's who Angel was. Angel Grace is her name. And after all these years, I finally mustered up the strength to, I used to honor her every year in our own way privately. And, I ended up 3 years ago cultivating a live event where we celebrate the lives of those that have been lost. And October is National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and it was coined by former President Ronald Reagan. He and Nancy had lost their 5-month-old daughter, and of course, until you go through these experiences, I never even knew that commemorative date was even around. So October is the actual month, and then the actual day is October 15. So this year, coming up on October 15, I'm hosting the third annual "You Are My Angel" maternal wellness event, and it's something that's very special to me. And I created the foundation in her honor, Angel's Grace Foundation. And with that foundation, the goal is to continue to bring awareness, bring support for grieving fathers, grieving mothers. How do we educate, people on maternal wellness? And maternal wellness doesn't have to start when you have a child. It can start earlier than that. So I have, youth programs that talk about reproductive health, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful initiative that I was able to get done because of her short time here on this earth. So, it is the catalyst that also keeps me going because I ended up finding success in our subsequent IVFs, and I now have two more boys. I had twin boys, Kason and Camden. They were born a year after I had Angel, and then I have the little one, KB. He's 8. So altogether, we have a house of boys. I have all 4 boys.
You're outnumbered.
Yes, I'm outnumbered, right? So, it's just amazing. And I remember when the boys were little, the twins would be in their rooms, and they were micro preemies. born at 26 weeks in one day. So they had a little bit of a rough start. And they would literally, Portia, just be up looking and waving and giggling and goggling. And we're like, we don't understand what's going on. And in my heart, I know it was Angel there watching over them and making sure that they're okay. And she presents herself in so many different ways in my life. But, you know, to kind of wrap this segment part up, it's hard because that's who she was. She also keeps me going, and everything that I do, even though if it gets a little bit difficult, I always think about, you know, what life would have been like with her here, right? And as someone who did have a short life, what would she like to see? What would she like me to have people remember, or what kind of environment, you know, would she want me to curate for other people who are struggling as well? So, and the other thing about that, specifically tying into what you mentioned, Portia, is I'm dealing with all of this while, you know, I'm a woman in leadership. I'm an executive. I have this high power job, and literally, so first I'm dealing with trying to juggle infertility, and then now I'm juggling, you know, grief and loss, you know, and still trying to keep it together and have deadlines, and these are deadlines that have significant monetary penalties if they're not met.
Right.
So work was very challenging. It wasn't an easy situation. So that's also, you know, the catalyst that helps spearhead the work that I do with other women. And just so your audience knows, I delivered a TEDx talk in Raleigh, North Carolina last summer. And one of the women that came up, thank you, one of the women that came up, she waited in line to speak with me. And she said, you know, Dr. Mar, I didn't have a infertility experience, but I thank you for shaping your discussion and your talk around disruption, because I am currently a woman executive and I lost my father unexpectedly, and I'm in the crux of dealing with grief. And half of the time I don't know if I'm coming or going, and I'm just expected to keep going, you know? So all of that, Portia, put together and brought together and all in a nice bowl is kind of what, like, okay, Marlene, your initiatives are good. Keep doing what you're doing, because women and other people, they want to feel that someone can relate to them. They want to feel that someone, okay, I'm not alone on this journey. I have to keep going, because if they were able to keep going, I can too. And that kind of helps, you know, get them through the grief and healing process as well.
Dr. Mar, first of all, lots of love to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing about Angel
Yes.
Grace. How old would Angel Grace be today, Dr. Mar?
Okay. She would have been turning 15 in December.
Wow, man.
Yes.
Okay. December
Yes.
what?
December 21. So she was
December
born
20.
December 21, 2011, and her brothers were born November 19th. So almost a year to the day that she was born, and they'll be 14 in November. So
Wow.
yes.
So literally almost a Christmas gift, literally. Another.
Oh, let me tell you, it was a hot, like, I can't even describe it, Portia, because she was born December 21. My husband and I's anniversary is December 22nd. So, needless to say, I told that doctor, you need to get me out of this hospital. I've been here for 2 months already. I'm ready to go home. If I have to spend Christmas in here, you might as well just, you know, throw me out by the trash. Like, I can't, right? So between her being born around the anniversary and then Christmas, it was tough. It was a very tough time. But now we look back on the holiday, because I always love the holiday time, and it's just truly a blessing that I can appreciate now.
Well, Dr. Mar, let me just say thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing with our audience so many different grief transitions in your life, from the infertility journey to even Angel's presence here and then transition, but also the rebirth, the birth of
Right,
something that helps other women. Because what you just brought up, I never even heard of that before about checking your cervix. And I don't
right,
know if I have lots of friends who are currently pregnant. So I hope that
right.
they listen to this segment, because some
Yes,
of them are literally at the long haul. One is due at the end of
correct.
September. So
Yes,
there's so many different things that are coming up today, even postpartum. I just saw something again
yes.
about postpartum depression for a lot of women. So, Dr. Mar, this has truly been a beautiful conversation. And again, I thank you so much for coming on the show. And please keep us in mind if there's any new endeavors, if
Right.
your event that you're hosting for remembering, Angel Grace, please let us know for next year so we can possibly come and attend in person. Okay.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And thank you for sharing this on the platform, because I think that it also speaks to organizations and the work that I do with helping them create resilient organizational systems so that, women who are dealing with this can also feel supported in the workplace, because it's real and it's a lot on a professional note and personal. So I appreciate you having this on the platform.
Yes. And as we know, there's so many different changes happening right now, especially conversations around time off during seasons of grief,
Yes.
right? And that's a conversation for a whole nother day. Well, everybody, that was Dr. Mar that you heard from today on this episode of Grew with Portia. And that concludes our conversation for today. And until next time, everybody, peace and hair grease, everyone.